Hi, I'm Anthony from Sydney Backyard Veggies. Today I'm going to be working on this season's ginger crop. I'm aiming to grow a whole year's worth of ginger this season, and so I've gotten an early start on growing out my plantings. I grew my first season of ginger last year, growing a few nice sized gingers for the kitchen. This year I'm going to try things a little bit different, starting off my seedlings a little bit earlier and giving them more space to grow. This is my ginger crop for this season, and I've got 12 plants in this tray. Now these are started off as nodes cut from the gingers I grew last year, and what I've done there is I planted them in a tray of seed raising mix and had them sit on a heat mat for the last 2 months, and it's that extra heat has really helped them to move along and germinate. These are now grown up to a point where they need to be planted out. For my growing medium, I'm using a combination of potting mix and seed raising mix, probably almost a 2-to-1 mix. I've also added half a scoop of chicken manure. I found that ginger in last year's season really responded well to nitrogen fertilizer. I filled up each of the pots to about 3/4 full, and I'm going to give it a light water just to compress that soil a bit, and then I'll plant out my cuttings. In planting my ginger, I'm looking at potentially trying to plant 1 node per pot. Now looking at this one here, it's got the single node here, it's grown. It's got a second node growing here, but I'm actually going to leave that as is and let it grow out. So just lifting it gently out of the seed raising mix, and you can see that the roots are actually quite shallow, so they don't need that much depth in the tray. Likewise, even in the pot, they don't need that much depth. Just going to position it in the middle and just moving the soil around with my hand. Just going to try to see if I could sit this tray, this cutting in the ground, and then making sure I don't cover up the node, just leaving it just on the top of the bed, just like that. And that's now ready to be watered. Just giving it just a slight covering. In the soil covering, you can just see that the soil is just over the rhizome, so don't want to go too deep. Leaving it at that. That's now planted. I'll give it a gentle water just to make sure the soil settles around the plant. And in watering these plants, I'm just going to give them an initial, just a light watering, just to get that soil to firm up around the plant and actually encourage the roots to hold. And when it comes to positioning my pots, I like to find a location in my garden that gets morning sun and shade in the afternoon. I find that in my experience, ginger enjoys a lot of sun, but not the harshness of the afternoon sun. So I've got this little corner here. You'll get about 4 or 5 hours of morning sun and then be a shade in the afternoon. And I'll move them around as I need to. We're having them in pots will make it quite easy. If I feel that they need a bit more sun, just move them into another location in the garden. Just continuing on with my spring plantings. I'm over here at my northern beds, just here adjacent to the chicken pen, and I'm going to be planting this year's pumpkins in this spot. Now it's a nice spot, full sun, but it does have the shade of these olive trees behind me. There's a spot that's tucked away enough that I can let the pumpkins sprawl around this area without too much impact on the rest of the garden. And I'm going to start preparing the bed. Before I do, I'll show you what variety I'm going to be planting in this spot. When it comes to pumpkins, the variety I grow are butternut pumpkins. I have tried in the past to grow Japanese and other style pumpkins, but I just find that they just take too long to grow in my context. They tend to take over the whole patch. So I like butternut pumpkins because they generally stay a lot more compact, and I find that they ripen a lot faster than other varieties. The variety I'm growing is the same one I grew last year, which is the Havana. This one does a really nice sized pumpkin, and last year it did okay, but my issues that I had was that I wasn't able to add enough fertilizer to the plants. The pumpkins that I harvested last year, while plentiful, they were quite small, simply because I did miss out on adding that fertilizer. And look, it's a lessons learned that I got, and so I'm going to make sure that this year I am
making the effort to add that additional side dressing when it was needed. So with that in mind, I'm going to be adding a lot more manure to this bed. In particular, this bed, it's actually, the soil inherently is quite sandy in this spot. This is legacy soil that the previous owner had added. He added topsoil to the beds. But what I'm going to be doing is actually adding bags of cow manure and also chicken manure to the bed, and I find that combination will add more of that nitrogen to the soil. Just to add additional fertility to the bed, just a scoop full of chicken manure pellets for more nitrogen, and on top of that, again, dolomite lime, sweeten the soil, add a bit of calcium, and sulfate of potash for all fruiting vegetables. Potash is perfect. They really do need it, and it's just slightly spreading it around the bed. Just going to now mix it all in, level out the plot, and then start planting into the bed. So the bed's prepared now, and I'm going to just start planning out how I'm going to plant out these pumpkins. And what I'll be doing is I'm looking at planting 2 rows of 5 plants, and I'm going to be spacing them out at 60 centimeter spacings. And what I'll be doing is having a planting location just at the top there and one down here, and I'm going to 60 centimeters in this direction and then 60 centimeters along the bed. And using my trowel, what I'm going to be doing is actually making a depression in the soil, and I'll be planting my seeds in that, and I'll just be using the trowel, just trying to even out the depression. Try to make it normally 30-40 centimeters in diameter. And if I bring it closer to show you, you can see just a depression, just a circle, and it's just probably about 5 to 10 meters deep. And this is where I'm going to be planting my seeds, and I'll be doing those across the bed. In every location I'm going to be planting my seeds, and then I'll come and add water to these depressions before I plant out my seeds. Now before I plant out my seeds, I like to fill up the depressions with water. That way I'm planting my seeds directly into wet soil rather than having to water them after the fact. And all I'm doing is just filling up the depression reasonably full, and letting that water slowly seep into the soil. This also gives me an opportunity to really define those depressions. To plant out my seeds, I'm looking at trying to plant potentially 2 positions in this depression, and I will then thin out the seedlings down to the strongest one. Just using the back of my trowel, I'm just doing a small indentation there and there with my seeds. I'm going to be trying to drop at least 2 per hole. These seeds are about a year old now, and I don't want them to I don't want to keep them much longer, so I'm going to try to use them up now. And adding 2 seeds there, 2 seeds in the other hole, and there. And using vermiculite, as I do with all my seeds that I direct plant out in my bed, I'm just going to use just a little bit of vermiculite just to cover up that hole. And that's it. I won't water these anymore. There's enough moisture in the soil to wet and hold down that vermiculite so it doesn't get blown by the wind. So just finished planting that bed, and I end up planting out 8 positions, got the 2 plantings per bed, and I will come at a later date to thin out the weaker ones and leave just the stronger plants to grow in this space. I'm expecting these to germinate. At this stage, it's been 7 to 10 days. I'm finding that my seeds are germinating in the ground, and as the weather warms up, I'm expecting it to speed up a little bit more. And over the next few videos, I will show you how I look after these plants and make sure that they produce well. Really keen to finally get my pumpkin plants in the ground. I do try to grow my season's worth of pumpkins from this one planting, and I'm hoping that they will last me the rest of the season all the way up to spring next year. Quick update on the pumpkins, and these germinated about a week ago now, and they're pretty much got 90% germination, so I've got seedlings in every location. Still got the cat protection on them so that the cat doesn't break them, but they're on their second, or their first true leaf, actually just on their second true leaf. And what I'll be doing then is in a week or so, I will thin down to the strongest plant. I will keep 2 locations. I'm thinking I'll be able to add enough fertilizer to keep them going. I'm going to need to also add irrigation on these plants. We'll start fertilizing them in about 2 to 3 weeks time as they get to that 3rd true leaf. But yeah, really going strong. Impressed that the seeds, the failure on germination wasn't too bad. It actually did germinate quite well, so happy that they did that. So I'll keep you posted on how they end up producing as the season goes along. And before I wrap this video, I'm going to give you a quick update on my first planting of cucumbers. And in my previous videos, I'd been talking about how bad these cucumbers were faring when I first planted out, but surprisingly, they have spruced up. A little bit of Epsom salt, a little bit of nitrogen fertilizer, and they've really come through. There is still a little bit of disease potentially coming through, but at this stage, they're looking fine. I think another round of fertilizer will really help them continue going. But what I have done in the meanwhile is I've installed a string trellis system for them, and I do have a few videos posted online of how I set this up, and I'll put a link to that video in the show notes. The installation consists of 3 steel pickets just evenly spaced along the row, top member and a bottom cross member that runs along the row, and then on that I am tying baling twine as my string trellis all the way up to the top. And the idea is that I will be training the vine to twist around the baling twine, and that will be twisting in a clockwise direction at the moment, and I find that's that is the best way to train them on the string. Now they will, if you come in months, they will come all the way to the top here, but it's a nice way to raise those vines off the floor, keeping that fruit clean, and yeah, it allows for a better harvest. But the issue I'm having at the moment is my cauliflowers are starting to push up hard against those cucumbers, but happy to say my cauliflowers are ready to harvest, and there's one here, but essentially looking at all of them at the moment, and all almost ready to be harvested, even these ones. So what I'm looking at doing at this stage is just to harvest all the cauliflower that's hard up against the cucumbers as a minimum, and I'll have a look to see if there's any large ones. That one's definitely have to be harvested now. See if there's any large ones that need to be harvested, but the rate this bed is going, I'll be clearing this bed by the weekend, so 4 days time they'll be all cleared. I will harvest, see what I can harvest. I'll definitely harvest this row here, the row adjacent to the cucumbers. I'll move that on, and I will show you the final harvest, and then I'll see what other work I need to do on those cucumbers. Beautiful, perfect.
This is today's final haul, and I've got 11 cauliflowers today, and you can just see they're actually quite nice looking harvest. There are some that have gone a bit too far, that one, and there's just a little bit of slug damage, but generally speaking they're looking really, really good. Still have a lot of crop in the ground, still got to do a lot of harvesting this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to moving this bed on. I'm thinking of planting another row of cucumbers here, just here on the left, and then on top of that starting to plant more beans and just some other veggies in this spot. One takeaway I take from this harvest in particular is that you can grow cauliflower and brassicas really late in the season, especially as long as you get the right variety. Go for a warm season variety, late season variety. In my case, Serenity, they've done well, not bolted, have put on a lot of size, so they're a decent looking cauliflower. I was actually worried earlier on that I might lose the crop, especially when it was really, really hot, but thankfully it come through. As long as you stay on top of the cabbage fly moths and the aphids as we start getting into the warm season, you can get a crop. Now that there's a clear pathway opened up now, I'm going to come over to my cucumbers here, and I'm going to continue installing the last of the string trellis in this space. I've got half a dozen cucumbers are going to fit here, so I'm just going to run a few lines, sort them out, get them started to climb onto that string, and then call it a night. Just finished the last bit of that trellis, and now the cucumbers are good to go. They are still a bit short, some of the cucumbers, so that I can't train them onto that string yet, but over the next few days they'll start getting long enough and I will train them. I'm going to do a separate video in the coming weeks when I do trellis my second planting of cucumbers, and they're probably about 3 weeks away, so stay tuned for that video. But really happy actually that the cucumbers did bounce back. It was touch and go earlier on, but they are flowering a lot at the moment, and I will be harvesting, expecting to harvest in about 2 weeks time. So yeah, gotta take these cauliflowers inside. It's just about to start raining, so I better call it a day in my garden. But thank you very much everyone for joining me in this video. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope to see you in the next one.